What absurd advice did your grandfather give you that turned out surprisingly true? At the end of his life, when he started to slip mentally, my grandpa would repeat an anecdote aphorism he felt was pretty poignant. It went along the lines of a bunch of villagers going back and forth across the border of Iran and a single old man sitting and watching them. When the Soviet Persian authorities questioned him as to what and why those people were doing, the old man would reply, "Mullah Mirza has no objection." I have no idea what this meant, and he was beyond the ability to explain it. Would appreciate if anyone can illuminate this portion of my grandfather's life. My grandpa told me not to take advice from old people. Which is ridiculous, of course, because he was an old person. Then he told me that he had a lot of experience with a lot of things, and almost none of those things still existed. He could give me advice on getting a first job 60 years ago, for example, but it's not like people got jobs that way anymore. And then he told me to be very careful about taking advice from my parents for the same reason. And he was basically right. Just a weird way to present it. After he died, I remember cleaning out his shed and found a heap of glass jars with the lid screwed up onto the underside of a shelf at eye level in the cupboard. The jars were screwed onto the lids. Inside the jars he had all his nuts, bolts, screws sorted. Just identify what you want, give the jar a twist, bingo. Fuck, that was smart. Not my story, but my father's. As he was hanging out with his grandfather one day, his grandfather said to him, "If someone asks you to do something, don't argue with them. Just say that's a good idea. Then don't do it. You won't even have to miss your place while reading the paper. Before you move in with someone or get married, think of all you like about them and divide it by 2. Then take all you hate about them and multiply it by 2. Then decide if you still want to be with that person, because that's what you're likely to get." My grandpa once told me that when I started to get serious about wanting to marry a woman, to do this. Take her out for a romantic walk by the creek and throw her in. When she comes out of the creek, take a good look, cause that's what you'll see every morning. Shutting the fuck up. No gossiping, don't waste time arguing with fools, don't bother trying to change people's opinion of you, don't argue with your mother, and if the cops ever pick you up, you say nothing other than you want a lawyer. He was a cop. The first time my grandfather met my wife, he told her cheated on my grandma with a whore during the Korean War. My grandma and dad were like, right there. It was certainly surprising to most people in the room, and I have to assume it was true. Nothing too ridiculous, but he confided in my mom when I left to live in the US that he was concerned about me visiting bars. She asked him why, he said, "Well, because of all the bar fights." He was 100 serious. I miss that man so much. Not a grandfather but an uncle. Smart, sexy, sane. Pick any 2 to look for in a partner, cause all 3 is rare. If you find someone who is all 3, marry them while you have the chance. I visited my grandparents before my high school trip to France. My grandfather decided to open up about World War II and told me to avoid Pigalle in Paris. I might pick up STDs. My grandfather really only ever talked about brutally violent war stories from World War II in Korea, so I guess his advice was don't commit war crimes. And so far I haven't. May God never bring you what your body can resist. Felt contradictory, until I saw firsthand how terrible living with certain chronic diseases can be. My grandpa thought eating sunflower seeds kept his hair black. Which surprisingly is true, so long as you also use 5-minute hair color for men. Neutral face. Never fall in love with a black woman. Look. My grandfather had some wisdom, but a good bit of it was questionable at best. If you ever travel back in time, don't step on anything, because even the tiniest change can alter the future in ways you can't imagine. I'll always remember something my grandfather said just before he kicked the bucket. "How far do you think I can kick this bucket?" Wear a ridiculous hat to diffuse arguments. How do you stay angry when you're talking to someone wearing a propeller hat? You don't. You can move to the middle of nowhere to escape your problems, but you still have to take yourself with you. When you're out on the road, eat where the truckers eat, because they either good food, or pretty waitresses. Punch him in the throat. He'll never put his hands on you again. This ended a 3 years abusive relationship. Stop eating just before you're totally full so you stay thin and have great memories of the meal. Just cut off the mold, the pork is fine. Homie was dry aging in the living room for 60 years. If you're ever riding the train to Shelbyville, be sure to put an onion on your belt. Never waste diamonds on a hoe. Think about that every time I play Minecraft. You don't want to backpack Europe in your 20s. Sorry, misread the question. I'm just realizing I never had any conversations with my grandpas. If you have a bruise, put onion on it. Apparently it actually works. My grandpa told my husband, "If you don't use it, you lose it. Apply for jobs in person. Don't bother with that online crap. The first two are for the taste, the rest are for effect. You can have kids and dogs or grass. You can't have both.